Hey, what's up there, my friends? Well, I guess I could call you friends. Some of you. I mean, some of you probably consider me an enemy. Some of you consider me an acquaintance. I know that, the online world has brought about many different feelings about what friends are. And years back, when I first started my channel, I remember having a discussion very specifically where somebody talked about making friends online. And I remember saying something to the effect of, nobody you meet online are friends. If you haven't met them face to face and spent time with them, they can't be your friend. I totally retract that statement. And I have for many years. It didn't take me long to realize how ridiculous that was. The reason being that the internet, let me explain, the internet for a lot of people is their only chance to make friends, at least in their minds. Perhaps it's not the reality. People can go out and meet people, but for some people it's easier. It's also easier to get wrapped up in echo chambers and believe everything that we hear. So we're walking a fine line if the only exposure that we have to other people is what we see online. A couple things that I really wanted to talk about, especially regarding he who speaks the loudest has the least to say, and how in the modern day the internet is full of people who are screaming and vying for your attention. And most of those people, unfortunately, are just like the rest of us and are just trying to make a living. And perhaps ad revenue or sales or merchandise is their living. And because of this, let me just give you back up a little bit and start with the media. Everyone complains about how the media fills our heads with bullshit. And I always play the devil's advocate on this by saying it's our fault. Nobody wants to blame the consumer. But ultimately, we are the end consumer of the news. We're not forced to sit and watch it. Advertisers work with the media because they know people watch it. So, back, 30, 40, 50 years ago, back when it was somewhat less biased on news channels, for example, there was still partisan media, but for the most part, it was people covering the topics. And in the 1980s, in the Reagan administration, they eliminated the fairness doctrine, is what it was called, and it was where you were supposed to give equal time to both viewpoints. It wasn't the fault of the administration. It was the media companies, the news channels themselves, that sued the federal government, saying it infringed on their free rights to tell them what they had to report on. Fast forward, this is very similar to what's going on with the internet today, where people are being, told, well, I don't know, you're not allowed to. I don't know why I did that. I set the alarm just in case, just to see if it worked, and naturally it would go off during the video. But I'll continue. I guess I don't want to get too far onto that actual topic of media itself, but the idea is that it was they said our consumers want to hear more viewpoints like this and commentaries on this side of things. So we got things like Fox and CNN, complete polar opposites. Now, it's very similar to the internet today when people are saying, well, what are we allowed to talk to about online? And there's more people represented from this group than from that group. Now, all of this is not even about really the subject of this video. It's just to kind of give a preamble, I guess, about where I'm coming from, on the sense that the internet has made it very difficult to navigate the truth and know who's trying to give us facts over just sensationalized propaganda, right? I'm going to try to remember this Zen quote. It was something like, he who speaks loud says little, he who speaks little says much, or there are many different versions of this, but we're kind of stuck in this product, like when people buy products, for example. Are you buying it for pleasure, or are you buying it for product placement? Product placement or pleasure? And product placement would be like buying a shirt because it has a brand name on it when it costs $200. I mean, you could wear that, you could buy a generic or a knockoff, but we're convinced that these companies have the loudest voice, they have the most commercials, therefore they are valuable. And I don't want to get too off topic here because it's important to navigate, I guess, in my mind where I'm coming from here. To explain that just because something's popular doesn't make it valuable or good. And people will tell you that all day long about the media. Mainstream is bullshit, mainstream is this, mainstream's that. But the same thing goes for anything. Sneakers, clothing, sports cars. And a lot of people do identify with their clothing or with their vehicles. And hey, I can't blame a person. If they spend $100,000 on a sports car, of course they're going to try to identify with it. I mean, hell, people try to marry their cars. I mean, there's a lot of weirdness out there. That's a totally different story. But the question I guess I wanted to pose for that was, who are we trying to impress? And I think that's a point that's often overlooked. And what I mean is, if you're buying something that has a brand name, and there will be people who are impressed, but who and what kind of people do you attract when all they care about is a brand name or what kind of car you drive? Like if you're trying to impress women by telling them you have money or showing them a nice car, that'll work for a lot of women, but a lot of women will scoff at it. I would say that nobody really scoffs at money, and it's not a woman thing, or like women are greedy or, just in it for the cash. But some women say, hey, that's security, and they definitely will be attracted more to the money than the person. That's the point. So asking who we're trying to impress, I think, is majorly important. Now, I'm a hippie type dude. Obviously, I've got my long hair, and I've got my beads, and my demeanor and the way that I am, and I'm fairly confident with that. I mean, I've been called every name in the book since I was younger. Hippies are the big problem of the world, right? Goddamn hippies. But I have associated and related more to the hippies in this world than anybody else from the time I was a teenager. Therefore, I've stuck with it because let's say I've talked within these intellectual groups, a lot of them are total dicks. I've talked within, political groups. They're just all upset all the time about every little thing in politics. I guess these are just major examples, extreme examples. I don't really join groups, but I've never tried to be anyone else than who I am, and I just fit into that hippie realm. I love going to concerts and festivals, but I also love the idea of sitting down with a group of people, strangers, taking some psychedelics together and learning about the universe in a way that works for me, right? So, what I wanted to say after this thing about, materialism and pleasure and these companies vying for our attention is to say sleep on it. It's the old saying, sleep on it. We do this with anything where people say, I'm going to have to think about it. And this might be a week or a month. Sometimes we have to sleep on something for like a year before we can even really decide if we want to do it. And it's kind of like the 3 rules that that I was thinking about earlier. Before you make a major decision or make a claim about something that you've just learned or just understood, or maybe you feel like, I don't know, overwhelmingly excited about, something. Okay, so sleep on it for one. Number 2 is stop yourself from blabbing, and blabber. Sit back and listen and really understand the subject. And it's taken me decades to learn that one because I tend to be a little overbearing sometimes. And number 3 is don't share your goals. That sounds counterintuitive, but it's important. Too many people want to tell everybody, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and then they feel let down when they don't do it. So it's harder to not share your goals, but wait till you've worked on it for a little while, and then people will notice, right? That's I guess, for me, how I sense the value of an endeavor that I want to take. It's not about saying, this will be the greatest thing ever, and telling everybody that. It's like thinking it's going to be the greatest thing ever in your head, and not going around saying, I have the best company in the world, and my products are the best. And as a guy who sells herbs, believe me, I went through this phase where I was really proud of all the products I sold. And then after a while, I thought, oh, maybe I'm overselling it. I mean, other people, have good herbs too. And then I started questioning myself. Then I tried a bunch of other products, went back to trying some of these other blends, mushroom blends, kratom, a variety of other things. And I said, yeah, no, you stick with what you know. There are certain things that you can take pride in. And the point of that is I'm not proud of me. I'm proud of the product itself. I have maybe not pride, but confidence in what I'm doing. And so many things are just sold for the sake of selling it. Like people, I said the other day, who are famous, like celebrity culture. Just being famous for being famous, not really doing anything. But that's for another story. Um, you know, not all people are not all people are intelligent. I mean, there are some dumb people in the world, of course. And I'm not talking about lack of education by circumstance. I'm talking about people who choose to be willfully ignorant, you know. And this is costing us dearly. And this will be the second part of my video here that I really wanted to cover first, but I just had that other stuff in my head. We can't even mourn things that are going on in the world that are affecting us as a collective anymore, because there's so much division that even something like a fucking pandemic that is killing people is divvied down into numbers, and people trying to minimize and belittle those who even have died. Well, it was a pre-existing condition. Oh, these are the new CDC realizations. Oh, look, nobody's really dying of COVID. It's just all a big scam. It's all a Democratic conspiracy, right? And then I look around at the big picture, at the whole world, all the rest of the nations that are shutting down, and all the measures that people have taken, and I think, wow, isn't it funny how Americans will be willfully ignorant and actually not think it, because I know most people don't really believe it, but claim that the only reason we're trying to have shutdowns or have people wear masks is to invade our civil rights and to shut down cities to throw the election. Now, let me just say this before you get all huffy about that. I don't doubt that people will use any pandemic or disaster to their advantage. We always have. But there are still people out there in my own nation who, if you even talk about COVID and talk about people who have died or try to have sympathy for others, they say, oh, it's overblown, it's just a hoax. And you know what? If even a few people die, have a fucking heart. Because I guarantee, what if it's something like, ALS or let's just say a lesser known disease that there's a fundraiser for? Would you make fun of a random rare disease that affected children or adults? Of course not. You'd say, man, that sucks for them. So even if a few people are dying from this novel coronavirus, even a few, have a heart about it, Do we think we should shut down everything? No, of course. I'm not supporting that. At this point, we have made some horrible decisions, but at least we can empathize together, right? And care about the fact that we're all suffering. So in other words, setting aside all the regulations and all the stupid decisions states have made, this winter might get a little bit nasty if we still have COVID alongside the flu. Some people have said up to 10% of the population may have had COVID in the U.S. Others are saying a study that was done on 1 million people that donated blood, it was less than 2%. We don't know. Maybe it's 20%. But I'm guessing that it's going to be a while before we're done with this thing. And in the meantime, we have a flu season coming alongside it. And I think that we're going to need to come together a little more than we are on this. At least just give people a little space instead of making assumptions about each other. Do we want our next generation to have empathy? Do we want them to care about each other? Or do we want them just to value the stock market over lives as a main focal point of this was our GDP this year and it fell a little bit, so we had to kill off a few people to get it back there. We are not... was going to say we're not cattle, but even cattle are not cattle because that's the wrong metaphor. Cattle, shouldn't be numbers either. Respectfully treated just like any other creature, right? Well, humans are treated worse than cattle sometimes. It's as if we just don't care about each other anymore. In fact, I guess PETA would be the perfect example of that. They've treated humans like shit, done all kinds of horrible things to other humans, and euthanized most of the animals they've come in contact with. But most people just think they're saving the animals. They think they're saviors, just like many people think that they're saviors in politics or their religion or anything else, but really they're causing a bunch of harm. And that's the world that we live in. I want a future of kids who have some fucking empathy for one another. You don't have to be a wuss. You don't have to be a snowflake or overly sensitive or ban any free speech to do this. You just have to care about other people. And I thought, it's funny because we've actually blamed other humans for so much. Everything that happens is blamed on some other person instead of circumstance. But I started thinking empathy is one of those things that we can handle. It's a long-term goal, a long-term value. And for example, the substance of what I'm even talking about, empathy, it's something that will endure. If you were to listen to this 10 years from now, it'll probably still ring true. Empathy still matters. But we're more focused on the short term. How much has the Benghazi, remember Benghazi? How much has it really affected our lives? And how many other lives has the incident affected? People talked about that consistently. It was just, post after media thing about a few soldiers and an incident across the world. People choose to focus on things because they want to focus on something they can try to wrap their heads around, understand, and create a reality for. But when it's something like a virus that's taking over, a lot of people's lives, long-term neurological issues, even from people who have recovered, it's something to at least be wary of. And the fact that people are still in denial that wearing a mask can even stop some droplets, that they just won't compromise. It just shows me that we're at a point right now where, it's a travesty. It really is. By definition, a travesty is a false, distorted view of reality. And that's what our society is right now. And I'm not going to say it's ever been any different because life is a travesty. Every one of us sees through our own eyes. We use our own ears. We have our own brains. We see things in a unique way. And that's never going to change. The idea that we're going to hit some spiritual truth where we don't need language anymore and everybody feels the same way is nonsense. Because if that were true, we'd be homogenized. We'd basically just be worker bees. The thing that makes us, some of the things that make us unique are the same things that we really have to work on if we're ever to cooperate with one another. Which means being able to analyze the loudest voices, to analyze the substance that's out there, and realize there are no philosopher kings because no philosophers want to be king, and that's something that should be changed. Because we don't cherish the right things in our society, in this guy's opinion. But I'm saying we as a whole. There are many people who do. And fortunately, there are a vast majority of people that I've talked to share the values that I think, that I share. Which is protecting your environment, caring for nature, yet still utilizing the environmental, tools that we were given. We were given a planet to use, so we don't have to sit back and go back to some ancient way of sitting in caves. That's preposterous. We can still have technology. We can still share things with each other and have enough to give. And if the system was set up properly, there's enough food to go around, and there's more than enough materials to go around. If we weren't, spending so much money buying and developing new missiles, and we were instead developing new school systems, then maybe we would have a better result. But, our country's falling behind, and the people don't want to admit it. And it's shameful from what the media is doing. It's shameful for what the individuals are doing in the alternative media, the Alex Jones type, the ones who know exactly what they're doing, but you just can't resist when you get that many views. And I'll just tell you this, I would never succumb to that. I would never, ever compromise my integrity to make a dollar if it was going to hurt other people especially. And that's exactly where we are at right now. People have always been willing to compromise their integrity, even if it harms others. And I wish it weren't true, but it is. And it's the world we live in. And I've tried to deny it over the years, but at a point you just have to admit there are some really shitty people out there with evil intent. If you want to define evil as just, malicious, something that's not beneficial to their fellow man, and they know it to make a dollar. And I think if we all just avoided that kind of stupidity, it would at least be a step in the right direction. But also, we can turn off the TV. We can turn off Fox News. We can turn off CNN or NBC. There's nothing wrong with knowing what's going on, but I guarantee if you turn off the TV for a week and then you just read the headlines after a week, you won't have missed anything. You really won't. So that's all my words of wisdom for what they are. Some stupid hippie sitting in his office in the back of, some suburb in Vancouver. Hey, I am who I am, right? And we don't listen to each other because of whether we wear suits and ties, right? Oh, wait, we do? Or how much money we have. Oh, wait, we do? And that's the problem, I guess. We listen too much to the wealthy telling us how to live our lives and the best way for humans to be. And it's costing us dearly. Talk to y'all later. Take care of each other. Be well.